Hi everybody, Rad Mom here. Welcome back to the garden on this lovely summer afternoon, where we're going to be talking with our old friend Arielle Scarcella again. But really quick, like the video if you enjoy my content and subscribe to the channel so we can all work together to drag feminism back into the real world. Some people really do want to live there, I think. I'm sticking by the idea that everybody would rather live there. We'll get it in editing. I was just sort of perusing Arielle's videos, and her titles really do not tell you what any given video is about, do they? We're gonna laugh with her, we're gonna poke some fun at her while she flies so close to the sun. I swear I can smell feathers burning from here. She really feels like she's onto something. Because she is. But she cannot see it. Because it's right there next to her key point of denial about everything. She's not just onto something, it is right in front of her. She just can't see it. Let's go.
Just when I think it could not get any more insane, it gets worse.
She actually has created a banner for the LGBT damage control. At least she admits it.
Jeffrey Marsh is back and trying to pass off being creepy as spiritual.
Trying to pass off creepy as spiritual is literally like a liberal creep's MO, isn't it? No, wait. If you replace spiritual with religious, that's right-wing creeps too. Boy, she really hit on something there already. This one, mwah, is a juicy morsel.
A xeno pronoun would be a word, I can't even say it, right? Because that's the point. They're unsayable and sort of effervescent and unknowable, kind of like a person's gender. That's why I love this one.
According to Jeffrey here, while we very well might not know a person's gender, because gender can mean anything these days, one thing that we do know for sure is that these people are absolutely bizarre. They're nuts.
So she's asserted that people like Jeffrey Marsh are nuts, crazy, mentally ill. Okay. She doesn't say what that means exactly. Maybe the examples she uses will help us figure out exactly what she means by that.
Really? Gender pronouns are so special? You can't even verbalize? You can't even say them? Is this similar to like 15 years ago when somebody knew about a band that no one else had heard of and they were cool and you weren't? My pronouns are so interesting, I bet you can't even say them. I bet you've never even heard of them.
Yep. It's literally exactly the same thing. Nailed it again.
Xenopronouns. Perhaps one of the most beautiful concepts, one of the most poetic ways to approach this subject.
I love that he uses the word poetic and then goes on to explain that they are inexpressible in language, which is, oddly enough, what poetry is.
Xenopronouns refers to any pronoun a person has that is unspeakable, that is unworkable in the language.
Then it is not a pronoun, sir.
Okay, so now we are purposefully making it more difficult for society to understand gender, even though gender really kind of doesn't make sense to me.
Yes! Did you just notice that?
Not only are we doing that, but we're also making it extremely complicated so that even if somebody can remember how somebody identifies and what pronouns to use, they're making sure you can no longer even pronounce it.
Yes, I believe back in the mists of time of about 5 years ago, they called this special snowflake syndrome.
Or that a xenopronoun contains an image or a concept that it's alluding to that is actually something that language has no way to express.
This is nothing new, Jeffrey. Language can never fully express how somebody feels because everybody has different hormones, different ways of thinking, different ways of feeling. What we can do is use the words that we do have or create new ones to hopefully express how we feel the best way we can to help us understand each other more.
What is language and what is it for? This is the level of discourse that we've been reduced to? And I love how she says hormones before ways of thinking. I think that may be very telling about how Arielle approaches the world.
This ain't it. This is also not it. Yelling at people for misgendering you when you clearly come across as female.
Lie, lie, lie. I'm So, what is your gender? Hey, lady, hey, sexy lady. Where that butt going? Lady. Come here, little girl.
I almost didn't include this because it hits me harder. I agree with Arielle. This person is different, right? You know, aside from being a female. I think it sounds to me like she's just taking her own trauma and literally just spewing it onto these people. Come here, little girl. How many times do you suppose somebody said that to her?
He just assaulted me too. He just assaulted me.
I really don't like talking about this kind of person as much as the narcissistic personality disorder kind of vibes, because to me this person clearly comes across as not mentally well.
But see, this is why I did include it, because this is also narcissism. This also looks like narcissism. This is the violent, explosive side of narcissism, where after they're done purring and cooing at you to get you to give them what they want, if you still say no, that's what you get. You get a screaming, petulant child in the body of a full-grown adult. And it's fucking terrifying, okay? This is why narcissism is really bad. She seems to be defining mentally ill based on their level of social function. Okay, the more socially dysfunctional you are, the more mentally ill Arielle Scarcella would view you to be. And, okay, fair enough, but I guarantee you that someone like Jeffrey Marsh has explosive rages just like that. And speaking of Jeffrey Marsh, why doesn't he count as mentally ill? He's a high-functioning predator, but he counts as mentally well enough to make fun of? Why? Because he's socially functional? That's one of the things that makes him so dangerous.
My ideal gender affirming care as like a trans non-binary person is kind of weird. And the thing is that I love it. And I would love to get a single mastectomy. Yes, I want one boob. I want one boob and one no boob. And then I want to like wear some like strange clothes that I made myself that'll like cover the boob part and then just let my other non-boob out in the open.
And this illustrates what I was saying. This could be almost the same young woman who was screaming in the Toyota dealership. Right? They could almost be the same person. Age, tone, body type, presentation is fairly similar. What's the difference? One of them's crazy and the other one's a different kind of crazy?
So people are just looking at me like...
See, this is a major red flag to me. Part of actually being transgender is wanting to assimilate to the best of your ability into society as the sex or gender that you feel.
Arielle has appointed herself the expert of what makes a person trans and not. She's here to tell us how each of these individual narcissists doesn't count. She's also drawing an immaterial distinction, an arbitrary distinction that serves her. She's doing the same thing. She draws this line as social functionality. Personally, I would move that bar a bit and draw it at the cutoff of material reality.
I don't know any sane, rational transgender person.
You can stop right there. You don't know any sane, rational transgender people.
I don't know any sane, rational transgender person that wants to make it obvious that they're transgender. Also, changing your gender and the way you present to society isn't meant to be a you. It's meant to be an I love you to yourself.
But she thinks she does, because she knows functional transgender people. And if that's your metric, it's a lot harder to tell one from the other, isn't it?
If that is what you truly need.
But I also want to have a kid. Wouldn't it be so cool to be a trans guy who just has a kid? Like, you know? Like...
You can't just have a kid as a guy. There's only one kind of person who can just have a kid. Those are females. And this person is talking about said kid, like the homemade clothing they were talking about a minute ago, as another accessory to try and squeeze more euphoria out of those around them. Yeah, that's pretty fucking narcissistic.
And the thing is that I have done a lot of work of degendering my body, like looking at myself in the mirror and being like, this body is not a girl body.
But it is a girl body.
And I have the exact same response as Arielle. Yes, it is. You just said you just want to have a kid one day. There's only one kind of body that can just have a kid.
Girl, you're gaslighting yourself.
Gaslighting yourself, also known as self-hypnosis, which is a real thing, right? It's kind of terrifying. It's what I ended up coming to the conclusion that Jesse Gender appears to be using his videos for.
It is okay to be a female and be transgender. It is okay to be a male and be transgender, meaning having gender dysphoria, transitioning in some way. It is not okay to lie to yourself.
We all lie to ourselves, Arielle. You're doing it right now. What's not okay is pretending you never make mistakes, honey. Like, you know, enabling a bunch of nutcases to invade your community.
How in the hell can you work on your mental and physical and emotional even truth if you are not even starting out being honest?
That's a very good question. But how is secretly being the opposite sex inside ever the truth? I'll wait.
You have to hate yourself. Hate yourself or you're not transgender. Which is such a flawed way of looking at it. Transgender people shouldn't have to hate themselves to be trans. Being transgender, for me, is more about the euphoria I get when I feel like myself and when other people perceive me in the way that aligns with my self-image, rather than like all over myself because I'm a terrible person who looks ugly and I'll never pass.
I think it's very possible that they just said the quiet part out loud.
I think you're right. I think she did say the quiet part out loud. That being trans is about getting euphoria, which is not about blending in, is it? That's not a mundane way to live. That's not an everyday way to live. That's what you might call unsustainable.
I think that you should focus on the things that make you feel good about yourself.
For one, passing is not something I'm interested in. I know a lot of trans people do want to pass, and that's totally fine.
Of course that's not something that you're interested in. All right, next.
I like how she blows this person off when they state overtly that they're not interested in passing. Isn't that what she was saying the whole time?
I am not, sir. Do you want to say that to the camera? Hundreds and hundreds of people watching you?
Me right now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
No, go ahead. You just called me a man. Don't be a coward. Don't be a coward. Yeah, you're a coward. Come on over. Say what you got to say to me.
Objects to being called a man, proceeds to act like a man.
Oh, you don't want to call me a man to my face? Come on over.
What? You don't want to say it to my face?
What do you got to say? What do you got to say about transgender people?
I didn't know you were trans.
Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't know you was trans.
Go ahead.
I did not know this man was trans. Wait, what do you go by?
Does it matter?
It does, because I'm asking you.
And there it is in a nutshell, right? From the look of this, the guy behind him is wearing a sombrero and smoking what appears to be a blunt. I'm pretty sure, I don't know where this was filmed, but I'm pretty sure they're on vacation and they're not trying to mess with anybody. Him putting them on the spot like this is more than a little cruel, I think. And yet, they are perfectly polite to this incredibly rude, aggressive person. Yeah. Because they're just there to have a good time. That's really the impression I got. I'm reaching a little in the interpretation here, but that's what I'm seeing.
Why are so many young black kids way more based than the majority of white kids? Like, honest, serious question. I want you guys to answer in the comments why you think that is the case.
Arielle Scarcella does not understand racism. You can go and pick up a book from any African American studies reading list, and it will probably answer this question for you. But in a nutshell, life experience and cultural knowledge. Okay? Because living in a fantasy world is a privilege.
And is y'all thing a cult? It's like LGBTTL cult or something?
There are 3 young men here. This is a different one. This isn't the one in the sombrero or the one who was speaking the first time. And he has put shots across the bow, right? By putting all those extra T's in the acronym. I'm pretty sure he knows better.
I mean, where's the lie though? Let's be real. If these kids saw me walking with my girlfriend down the street, being a regular lesbian, do you think that they would say the same thing about us? Would they view us also as a cult?
No, because you don't need to be a narcissist to be homosexual.
Or is it because of people like this who make a habit of filming people who they feel are harassing them?
But who opened the door for people like that, Arielle? It was you and people like you. Okay? Rationalizing how in the fuck it is that some man is ever a woman. Ever.
You know I'm a turf, right? Trans, eccentric, radical feminist.
Are you a TERF?
I'm a turf.
Wow.
Would you like me to move somewhere else? I will.
No, actually, you should tell me about being a TERF.
You're
Yes.
a boy, right? Don't with me, because honestly, I did hard.
I'd like to see you try.
There is no way to tell how this started because the video just starts where it starts.
I almost didn't include this either, but I think it's a really good example of just what a sadistic prick this guy really is.
But in my opinion, this is actually not a good look for this supposed TERF. If people are just simply existing without hurting anybody else, let them be.
As far as just existing, this looks like an Asian restaurant to me. She refers to herself as a member of a minority. And the way she just kind of announces her turfdom and has no trouble speaking openly like this to this person, you know, in a big wide open establishment, tells me that maybe her family owns this thing. So he's in her restaurant. And maybe she did come up to him and be like, you know what, I don't like you here. Get the fuck out of my restaurant. Isn't that her prerogative?
If that's what you want, to be who you want to be, then I get to be who I want to be.
Which is?
I'm not a witch.
See, and that's it right there. And I don't mean to insult this woman, but she misheard him. She said she can be who she wants to be, and he said, which is, as in, you know, as if to ask, well, what do you want to be? In a leading sort of way. And she responded, I'm not a witch. She either misheard him or is not quite all there. Either way, this person is not playing with the full deck. That's what that tells you. And as the person who flatters themselves to be so, that makes it your obligation to back the fuck off now.
Not okay to harass a random person like this, but also probably not okay to film somebody that just doesn't know any better and threaten them with it. But I can understand where the frustration with all of this is coming from. What this all really boils down to is an extreme amount of mental illness in society these days.
And what Arielle is referring to as mental illness is social dysfunction at a personal level, which is certainly a strong symptom of such. I agree.
And unfortunately, most of it, we haven't found the right way to treat it yet.
We haven't found the right treatment for all these different kinds of mental illnesses that are just popping up like crazy because, wouldn't you know it, most people cannot afford mental health care. Or, you know, around here in more rural areas, reach it. Also, they think body dysmorphia is a problem you solve with surgery.
I found this video about mass psychosis called How an Entire Population Becomes Mentally Ill. I highly suggest you watch this video as soon as this video is over.
This is where Arielle's eyes are really lighting up, isn't it? You can tell that she can smell it. She can smell that she's onto something big. It's right in front of her. And I saw this video too. I love this video too. I think she left out the most important part.
The individuals that make up this class, be it politicians, bureaucrats, or crony capitalists, are very prone to delusions that augment their power, and no delusion is more attractive to the power-hungry than the delusion that they can and should control and dominate a society. When a ruling elite becomes possessed by a political ideology of this sort, be it communism, fascism, or technocracy, the next step is to induce a population into accepting their rule by infecting them with the mass psychosis of totalitarianism. This psychosis has been induced many times throughout history, and as Mirlu explains, it is simply a question of reorganizing and manipulating collective feelings in the proper way. The general method by which the members of a ruling elite can accomplish this end is called menticide, with the etymology of this word being a killing of the mind, and as Mirlu further explains, menticide is an old crime against the human mind and spirit, but systematized anew. It is an organized system of psychological intervention and judicial perversion through which a ruling class can imprint their own opportunistic thoughts upon the minds of those they plan to use and destroy.
So all of these stressors add up to kill your mind, your ability to think clearly and critically.
It mentions a few really important key points. One being a quote from Carl Jung, a Swiss psychologist.
Jung, darling, Carl Jung, okay? He was a student of Freud, who you may have heard of, whose name is spelled with an EU in the middle, but it's pronounced like oi, because that's German phonetics.
And he said, it is not famine, not earthquakes, not microbes, not cancer, but man himself, who is man's greatest danger to man. For the simple reason that there is no adequate protection against psychic epidemics, which are infinitely more devastating than the worst of natural catastrophes.
Jung studied this phenomenon.
And they literally pronounced the man's name in the video she cites. Just the bare minimum, just the bare minimum. I swear that's all I'm asking for.
2 examples of mass psychoses are the American and European witch hunts of the 16th and 17th centuries, and the rise of totalitarianism in the 20th century.
Feeling like you're not good enough and then blaming other people for your own self-esteem issues. Claiming that everyone and everything is a literal threat to our society and democracy. Black versus white, men versus women, cis versus trans, gay versus straight. All of these things are used to scare us more, to divide us more. Who else is out there to get us? Type of shit. What has caused all of this?
Psychogenic triggers. The most prevalent psychogenic cause of a psychosis is a flood of negative emotions.
So that's why we fall prey to psychogenic triggers. You've had your ability to think clearly and critically pummeled into non-existence by the stressors. She leaves out the mechanism of how any of this actually works.
All of these things and tons more are things that I've covered on this channel for the last 4 years or so. And a lot of this has come from the far left and the far right.
Thank you for admitting that, Arielle. I wish you had used this video for something other than to prove yourself right. There's further conclusions that can be drawn here.
To me, it's quite obvious that the types of people usually associated with this side of things or this way of thinking are usually on the far left, but not always.
You know, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true at all. Narcissism comes in all flavors. And as we said earlier, they both like to use spirituality to justify their bullshit, don't they?
It's not the type of mental illness that has been associated with the LGBT community for the better part of the last 50 years. It's not depression and anxiety. Those mental illnesses are both biological and societal, and in some cases, actual homophobia is the root cause.
Yes, sometimes you're depressed and anxious because you're just fucking miserable. That's true. These things can also be symptoms of narcissism, because wouldn't you know it, the real world never seems to live up to their overblown expectations. You can be anxious and depressed and have it not make you crazy, though. It will make you pretty dysfunctional. I thought that's where the line was.
But now, this is a whole other level of insanity. The gays were not always like this.
That's true. The gays are not what we're worried about here. The gays are not the concern, right? The gays know who and what they are. How would you make the distinction between who is okay and who isn't? Speaking for myself, I think that your personal perception of someone's social functionality is a bit of a fuzzy line.
I mean, we've been called, you've heard it, we've been called Nazis all day, TERFs, what else? Transphobes. Transphobes, they'll call you any name in the book, and that's just meant to discredit you so that nobody listens to what you have to say.
Does this sound familiar?
Because what we're actually saying is completely logical and moderate, you know, but now they've moved the Overton window so much that they look at us as the radicals just because we don't accept all of this madness immediately.
Yeah, each side, right and left, have shrunk their respective Overton windows, right? And not towards the middle either, they're like this, right? It's not that they've moved it, it's that they've shrunk it. And left a lot of people politically homeless. Which, the more and more I think about it, doesn't that mean disenfranchised?
Just to be clear, you identify as lesbian and you identify as gay.
Yeah.
And
at least not straight.
And those folks over there, they're against you as well.
Yeah, we're old news. You know, we're old news. We don't matter anymore.
Oh yeah, and the thing that's playing in the background during this little interview is, Man, I Feel Like a Woman by fucking Shania Twain. The best thing about being a woman is the prerogative to have a little fun, which sounds kind of like being a girl to me, but boy are we confused about those two things, right? So I guess to her, feeling like a woman means being in the mood for fun. Which is not relevant, but I just thought that was the song that's playing in the background while they're interviewing these two people was mwah. beautiful.
We're not plus enough.
Yeah.
There was a time where we truly did accept people for thinking differently.
Yeah, that's what liberalism is all about. You really don't see a lot of that anymore. No, you don't. No, you don't.
What have we all become?
Victims of menticide. Okay? It does posit some powers that be that are, directing this whole thing, which is not something we're going to address in this video. That's a whole separate video unto itself. But assuming that even accidentally, maybe some authority has stumbled upon this principle, where if you scare people over and over again, eventually their ability to think critically just sort of gets shaken to pieces, doesn't it? And that's called menticide. There's a word for that. Why did you leave that out, Arielle?
When was actual liberalism for threatening and harassing people that think and live differently than you? When was liberalism anti-science and pro-made-up bullshit propaganda just to validate people's feelings?
When cultural relativism, the beloved child of liberalism, clashed with science and was allowed to win. That's when. When it was determined that people's fucking feelings were more important than facts. That's when liberalism was anti-science. I'm not exactly sure when that happened, but it seems to have happened. Because now a cultural reason is all you need to justify ignoring facts. And I just wonder if people enabling men who think they're women had anything to do with that.
Why is the victim status so attractive to people? My friend Zuby summed it up best in this tweet. If you're confused by why victim mentality is so attractive, number one, it provides a permanent alibi for personal failures. Number two, it attracts attention. Number three, generates sympathy. Number four, it acts as a social currency with like-minded people. Yeah. They're creating another hierarchy chart. I've said this before. Number five, it disguises negative traits and actions as virtues.
The victim mentality not only attracts, but also reinforces narcissistic personalities, doesn't it? Because in order to keep your social cred, you have to maintain the failures, don't you? I think we may be looking at an example of this right here, right? Where number one provides a permanent alibi for personal failures. Girlfriend, you let them in. You invited the vampire into the house, and now you're sitting here telling us why this, that, and the other suck mark doesn't count. No. You can't draw the line at your own personal feelings. That's the same fucking thing they're trying to do. She's playing the victim card herself. Look at the crazy fakers over here. Not the people who enabled them in the first place, like me.
I feel like this is one of my best videos in a while, so if you guys enjoyed this, please give it a big thumbs up and make sure you share.
So she does admit that the problem is on both the left and the right, so that's really nice. Most people have difficulty admitting just that, don't they? But yeah, she's using this thing that she's discovered, this really, this meaty point to prove herself right. That's all she's done. Look, you guys, I was right. Yes, they're narcissists. They're all narcissists, okay? Including the violent, dysfunctional ones. Because narcissism has a very violent and dysfunctional element to it. It is antisocial by its very nature. The fact that you don't always see that part is irrelevant, honey. I'm sorry. You let them in. A man can never secretly be a woman inside. That's not a thing. It doesn't happen. And she still doesn't understand racism. So. But, keep trying to rationalize those mistakes instead of facing them, Arielle. I know it must be exhausting. Deep breaths, honey. Thank you all so much for sticking with me out here in the garden on this lovely summer afternoon. I have been Rad Mom. Kind of poking fun at our old friend Arielle. And, if you made it this far into the video, then you almost have to subscribe, right? It's like the law or something. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!